This is the assembly of a Metabo HPT NR or NV83A5 trigger assembly. A lot of little small parts can be kind of a pain to get together, but it's actually quite simple. So this is the assembly of the NR or NV83A5 Metabo HPT pneumatic nailer trigger. The trigger houses the ability to go from contact actuation or sequential actuation, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. Okay, to start off, go ahead and to disassemble it, take a small socket or anything circular with a hole down the center and take out this roll pin that's holding everything in. It's a 2.5 millimeter punch that has to take it out. The trigger itself looks like it's a 3 millimeter, but the holes in the trigger lever and the change stopper are 2.5 millimeter. So you have to use a 2.5 millimeter punch to get it out. So to reassemble, take your roll pin and get it started. Get it started now, because it'll be a whole lot easier to start it when there's nothing inside the trigger. Or if you try to do it later, you'll be trying to hold everything while you line this little short roll pin up into the hole and try to smack it. And most likely you're just going to smack your fingers. So we've got the roll pin started. We're going to take our change rod. This trigger has a slot where the change rod goes back and forth for your actuation. The part of the slot that's closest to the main housing is quite large, and that's where you put your change rod into. The rest of the slot is just for your actuation of the two different modes of use of the tool. So put your change rod through that hole and move it all the way back closest to the roll pin. There's a little notch back there it'll fall right into. Okay, just take it all the way to the back and drop it in. Your springs, take a little bit of gear grease and put a little bit of gear grease on your springs. The grease will hold the spring in place while you're putting other parts together. So a little bit of grease on there, and then put them in position. The trigger lever has a little nub here, and that's where the end, that little nub right there, that's where the end of the spring goes on. Your chain stopper also has a little nub for the spring to go on. They're offset. One's offset to one side, the other one's offset to the other side. See? And they have to go on there. So now we're going to go ahead and take the trigger lever first and put it on the end of the spring without messing up the spring like I just did. I said that the grease will hold your parts in there. I didn't say it would super glue them in place. There we go. So now those springs are back. Let's try this again. So now that one's on. And make sure it is positioned in the middle. Take your change stopper and a little bit forward, put it over your trigger lever, and now push it back in place. You'll actually feel it click onto the change rod. And now your holes in your trigger lever, your change rod, and the trigger itself are all lined up right there. So go ahead and hold everything in place and knock that roll pin in. So now everything's in there. You're good to go. What you have now is your tension spring you have to put back in. So to put that in, go ahead and do your little change stopper here and move the rod to the center. This is your contact actuation. Toward the end is your sequential. Toward the middle is contact actuation. To put that spring in, you need to be in contact actuation. And what you have now are little holes. You see there's a little hole there, and there's a little hole there. Right there in the corners. That's where the legs of those springs, that's where the legs of the spring have to go into. Okay? So, with the U shape facing away from where you put your finger, put the legs of the spring into those holes. Trying to watch the camera and trying to watch the spring are two different things. Okay. Now it's up, the legs are all the way in there, and you can see that right now the ends of the spring, you can see that? Yep, there you go, right there. You see the spring is in the way of the change rod. If I was to try to move that to sequential, it's not going to happen. Also, if I tried to install the trigger like this, you can see that the end of the spring isn't going to go through where the trigger pin goes through to hold the trigger to the tool. So once you get it all the way in, go ahead and pull it back to where the spring lines up with the holes of the trigger. There. That's it. It's all set. Now you can go ahead and take it to your tool and put it in your tool. You gotta take this pin back out to put it in, but this kind of holds everything in place so you don't want, if you drop it and if nothing falls out. All right. I hope this helps. If you had any kind of questions about how to put this thing together, it's really very simple. I don't usually say anything about subscribing, but if any of my videos help you out, please subscribe. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.